Well, good morning, everybody. Before we begin, I just want to pass some remarks about Sam Uffindell. The first thing I want to say is that my thoughts are very much with the victim. I can only imagine the hurt, the pain, the suffering, the impact that this event has had on them. And I can say as a parent, if it was one of my children on the receiving end, you feel incredibly distressed and incredibly upsetting. So there is no place for violence in New Zealand, no context, no setting, no excuses, and we abhor it and we don't condone it whatsoever. I have to say, I think with respect to Sam, that he has fronted and that he is genuinely remorseful, he is genuinely regretful, and he's shown tremendous amounts of contrition and empathy for the victim. And importantly, he's fronting and he's owning that, and I expect him to do that, and he'll be here shortly with you later on to be available to you as well. And the fact that he's making himself available to media to front and own it, I think, is important. He is not the same person that he was 22 years ago as a 16-year-old. And I think fundamentally when you think about this place of Parliament and 120 MPs in it, I think it wouldn't be very full if we all had perfect pass as a result. And so he has my backing and he has my support, but clearly he needs to be able to build back trust with the voters in Tauranga and make sure that he is a person, and demonstrating as we go into the next election that he's a person of good character and importantly a good MP for them. And with that, happy to take any questions. Sorry, Jessica.
Have you been let down by your party? How flawed is the selection process?
Well, look, I mean, the process is in many ways kind of worked on one level because I'll give you two.
And there are several examples where it didn't, though.
No, let me give you some examples, where I think it did and it didn't. The first thing I'd say to you is that Sam actually declared this in his application up front. He was very transparent about it and up front. That triggered a red flag, which then led to what we call just deep reference checks, and from all aspects of Sam's life, and really quite deep, as well as obviously independent third-party references checking as well. And so that worked well, and the assessment was, hey, listen, no, Sam is a changed individual from the 16-year-old we saw 22 years ago. And he is a good candidate, and he's a high-integrity person, and he's of good character. And so that I think did work well, because at least the discussion was had, there was deep exploration of the issue. The thing that could have been different, frankly, is that I should have been informed rather than finding out yesterday. The second thing is that the delegates ultimately should have been informed. And most importantly, I think the voters in Tauranga should have been informed so they can form their own judgment and should have had that information in the campaign.
The fact that you weren't informed, do you blame that on
Sorry,
Peter
Barry.
Goodfellow? The fact that you weren't informed, do you blame that on Peter Goodfellow?
No, we have a process which is a long-standing practice. I lay down incredibly clear expectations, as you're all aware, about what I expect from candidates: high integrity, people of good character and good competence. But I stay away from individual candidate selections, and it's important that I do, because in our party those decisions are made by the party and by the members, who get to choose their own candidates and their own electorate candidates. And so that's the process, and I think that's the right process, because I think it's really inappropriate that a leader is in there individually picking and choosing individual candidates. But having said that, rather than finding out this afternoon, I think I should have been informed.
Has Sam Uffindell told the the only revelations to come about Sam Uffindell?
Yeah, look, I've had assurances that these are the only allegations and issues that we're aware of, and I've had assurances from the party and from those processes that is the case.
But those assurances are incorrect, and there are other allegations. What would you be doing?
That's hypothetical. What I'd say is I've had assurances that these are the issues that.
So did you say the delegates didn't know about this?
Yeah, so the process is that there's an initial sort of screening of candidates, as I said, with good reference checking. Then it goes into what's called a selection panel. And in that selection panel, all of those people were fully aware as they weigh up a series of candidates, and they can choose to let them go through or not go through. And there was deep exploration of this issue with Sam, with that selection panel. And then it goes out to 60 delegates across who are members of the party, who ultimately get to, and each candidate goes and spends time with them. And that's where they should have been informed of the issue as well.
So the National Party delegates who actually voted to give them the pre-selection did not know about this?
They should have been informed of it, as I think the public should have been informed of it as well.
So did that deep reference check that you talk about, did that involve discussions with King's College?
As I understand it, involved discussions with people who have known Sam post-schooling and have been involved in different aspects of his life here and overseas.
Would you not have expected, though, would you not have expected to get some information about the incident in question from someone other than Sam?
Well, Sam declared it pretty upfront, and it was pretty clear he'd been expelled from the school, and that was pretty transparent in all of the conversations that the selection committee had with him. Mikey?
So no one was asked.
The new party president, Sylvia Wood, was part of the selection panel. Do you have confidence in her in this process?
Oh, absolutely. Sylvia's been very important because she's actually been critical to making sure we've got proper deep reference checking and actually been driving a lot of the improved process.
Should she have told you about this?
Look, as I said, it would have been good if the party had been able to inform me properly before yesterday. I also think, as I said before, it would have been good if we'd done it with the delegates and, most importantly, frankly, with the voters to form their own judgment about Sam.
Did Sam apologise to the victim before or after Simon Bridges, he knew that Simon Bridges was going?
Yeah, look, as I understand it, Sam genuinely made a very genuine apology and reached out to the individual concerned. And again,
Bridges had said he was going?
yes, if you think about when Simon resigned, it was earlier this year, right, in the by-election. So, you know, it was, he talked about it, I think, yesterday, saying it was last year. So the reality here is, you know, I think there was a genuine apology out to the victim, and Sam has spoken a lot about the impact of that, and you've heard him talk about that a lot. And again, you know, that's right that he did do that because, you know, clearly that individual has suffered tremendously and it's impacted them tremendously.
How's it
Sorry.
your understanding that
Uffindell has committed a crime. How is this different to the situation when Materia Toure was held out of Parliament for admitting a historical crime? The difference, one key difference being that she was trying to feed her children.
Yeah, so this is a 16-year-old young person who clearly was expelled from their school. We're not talking about criminal behaviour here, criminal activity. What I'm saying to you is it's a serious incident, no doubt about it, and it's totally unacceptable and abhorrent. Unacceptable and abhorrent. And so essentially, you know, what we're saying here is, I'm not condoning the behaviour at all. I've been really clear about that up front. There is no place for violence whatsoever. But what I'm saying to you, what I'm saying to you is Sam Uffindell has changed from the 16-year-old teenager that we saw that was expelled from school 22 years ago. We have had assurances, we've gone through reference checking. The Sam that I've got to know has been high integrity and is a good person and of good character. I honestly would put it to you, if you think that is, you know, that if you go into the House of Parliament and you look around those 120 MPs and you think about each and every one of those individuals past and say that they cannot be there because of things they may have done, as long as they have changed, as long as they are of good character and as long as they are good MPs, they deserve a second chance. Sorry.
Is this not a stark reminder, though, that for some 16-year-olds an incident like that would potentially ruin their lives or even permanently kick out of other schools?
Well, I think Sam feels very strongly about that, and that's why he declared it up front to say that it was you know, the most seminal thing I'd say in his life that he felt, you know, was entirely inappropriate and unacceptable, and he declared that up front. But what I'd say to you is, if the criteria is that you have to have a perfect pass before you can come to Parliament, the thing that I'm most interested in is has the behaviour changed and is the individual different, and have they actually understood and admitted they're wrong, fronted up to it, been accountable for it, and changed their life as a consequence of it. That's the test.
Make sure that there are no other members of your caucus who have similar black spots in their past.
Well, look, I mean, I can deal with the candidates as they come through one by one, and essentially we've got really strong processes.
They've got black spots in their past, you're not interested in knowing about them.
I would expect people would declare where they have issues from their past that are of a serious nature that they should be informed. Sorry, mate. Sorry, ma'am.
How can voters in next year's election have confidence in Nationals candidates that are selected, that they also, you know, have incidents like this in their past and haven't been, you know, that voters have been told about?
Look, I think the reality is that, well, that's the reality of the process, is that we have been able to have a place where he has been able to declare. Importantly, we've been able to do deep reference checking to see, and then equally, we've now got to make sure that any issues like that are made transparent to the public.
Would you expect, ahead of next year's election, that any candidates that are selected by National would tell the public if they have any incidents like this in their past?
That would be my expectation, because I think it's only fair that actually the public can make their own judgment and form their own judgment about that, and it's also an opportunity for the individual to front and admit they're wrong and talk about how it's changed them.
National is the tough on crime party. Will this episode change party policy? Will you become the redemptive party?
No, they're two different things in the sense of we are still, very committed to being tough on crime, but importantly, as you saw with our Welfare That Works program, we want to be tough on the causes of crime as well. Jessica?
How damaging is it for the National Party to be talking about itself rather than reflecting on what is a somewhat positive poll?
It's been immensely frustrating as a distraction, but it's important that it's fronted and it's important that we confront it. And the reality is we are doing exactly that. We're up here fronting, taking your questions. Sam has been out there for 24 hours. My advice to Sam has been, you own it, you front it, you talk about it, and you take every opportunity to do so with every element of the media. So that's why I think it's important, that he does that.
Mr. Uffindell described this incident as stuff as silly. Today he talked on RNZ about rough and tumble. Is he minimising the seriousness?
Well, I think it's really clear to me it's a serious incident, and I can tell you as a parent, if that was happening to one of my children, I'd be incredibly upset, angry and distressed. So I think we need to call it for what it is. It was a violent act, and I think I think Sam understands that, and I think he has been saying that it is something that is incredibly unacceptable, and he acknowledges the hurt and the pain, the suffering that's caused the victim. It's all about the victim here. Do you know what I mean? The reality is this is someone who's incurred a lot of pain, hurt and suffering, and they deserve a genuine apology, but equally Sam's not hiding from the fact that it was wrong.
Can you confirm that Sylvia Wood was on the selection panel?
Sorry.
If the victim wants Sam Uffindell to resign, should he? It's all about the victim.
I think Sam has been really clear about, he's been incredibly remorseful, he's been very regretful, he's genuinely changed his life. And so I think he's made a really genuine apology, when it was April last year. And the reality is that, he's gone forward with his life and he's importantly turned it around. If I felt the same character was sitting there in Sam today that we saw in a 16-year-old report of Sam, that would be an unacceptable place for him to be, and he wouldn't be here in Parliament. And that would be my expectation. But I do think, I just asked you to go around and think about this place and think about the people that are here and their backgrounds and their past, and actually ask the same question. Well, they've been given second chances because they have changed their behaviour from their past instances as well.
Can you confirm that Sylvia Wood was on?
Was that Sam Uffindell's choice, or the selection panel advised him not to?
Essentially, it ultimately comes back to Sam and the campaign team that was on the ground in Tauranga. But the reality is, yes, we should have told the public so they could be informed of that and make their own judgment from there.
You said it wasn't a criminal matter. Do you not see it as assault?
I see it as assault. I absolutely do. Sorry, I was talking about a technical, legal, offence that was challenged that way.
Can you confirm that Sylvia?
Sorry, Aaron.
You say this is all about the victim, but yesterday Sam Uffindell said, I wanted to make it was a humiliating experience for me at the time and onwards. Is he making this about himself as well?
No, I genuinely don't. I think, Sam is genuinely really fixated on the victim, but he will be asking a range of questions, and people have been asking him how does he feel. He's explaining how he feels, but go back, look at, I can see the pain he's under, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. He is very focused on this victim and making sure he understands the hurt and the pain and the suffering he's caused.
Can you confirm that Sylvia Wood was on the selection panel for Nationals Tauranga candidate and knew about the incident?
Sylvia wasn't on the formal selection panel for Tauranga. That's comprised of 9 members, 5 local, 2 regional and 2 board appointments.
Can I ask
A
Chris
question
Luxon?
for Tom and Clay. You were running the numbers in Tauranga. When did you know about the incident?
I was a member of the selection panel. The information was provided to us by the board. We took it very seriously and saw it as an incident that needed to be questioned further. The panel questioned Sam for some length of time on this and all aspects of it, and we then considered it separately and came to the conclusion that it was an incident that he took seriously that happened 22 years previously when he was 16 years of age, and that he had worked very, very hard to be a better person since then.
As a senior MP with political nous, why did you not advise him to front with it? This is a new MP who's never experienced a campaign before. Why did you not think that that was the right thing to do?
Well, look, during the campaign we were very, very focused on the various things that were coming up, and look, in conversation with him, it was something that he was regretful for, that he had owned, that he had apologised to somebody that that person saw as was private, and that had been 22 years earlier, and he was 16 years of age.
Why did you not tell your leader about this?
Well, look, it's not my role as a campaign chair to talk directly to the leader about things that has happened in that selection process. It then goes back to the party and it becomes their responsibility.
If you found out about it in advance, would that have been a red flag for you, Chris Luxon?
Well, I just would have liked to have known about it so that I actually could, I just really wanted to know about it, as I think actually, members of the public and also the delegates should have as well. For me, again, I'd be wanting to then, be able to engage and have some questions, which I've spoken to Sam briefly yesterday, but I'm talking to him again today, to make sure that I felt that he had genuine contrition, that he had turned his life around, and that he was a different person of a different character. The Sam I know, that is the case. That is the person that I've got to know, albeit in a very short period of time.
How confident are you that there won't be anything else?
Well, as I've said, I've had assurances that of the deep reference checking, that there's nothing else that we're aware of as a party. I'll take one more question and then we need to go, guys.
Does this make National look a bit hypocritical?
Sorry, mate?
Does this make National look a bit hypocritical with all the talk of being tough on youth crime? And is there one rule for poor brown kids who commit ram raids and another rule for wealthy white kids who go to private school and just have to change schools when they beat someone up?
No, there's one standard of law for everybody. This is a 16-year-old who did a terrible thing, caused huge hurt and suffering on a victim, and is utterly unacceptable. The school clearly at the time took an action to expel him, which would seem entirely appropriate, and he's lived with those consequences, and he's fronted up to them, he's owning the consequences, and I think that's important that he does. All right, guys.
So this isn't going to sort of prompt any reflection by the party on policy at all, this concern?
No, but what it will prompt is a reflection on is there more optimisation of our processes? As I said, how do I make sure I was informed? How do I make sure that the delegates were informed, and importantly the public? Hey, listen, can I say thank you? We're going to take one more question, guys, and then we need to go.
So Todd, why didn't anyone talk to the school about this to establish an independent record of what happened and any prior incidents?
Well, look, the selection panel is given information and they then question that and act upon it. It's actually before that process that the investigation is done. We don't have the ability to do so. But I've seen reports from the school in the media today, and I think their position is quite clear.
Okay, guys, thank you very much.